let's talk about Metroid 1. So, I haven't really played many of the Metroids. I played Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion, and I think I touched Metroid Prime for maybe 2 minutes. So, now neither Super Metroid or Metroid Fusion had I beaten in the past. I really haven't given any time to this series, and I decided after playing Super Metroid on my Wii U a bit, I decided that I really should go back and play all these games. So that's why I started doing this, I'll say Let's Talk / Let's Play Metroid series thing. So Metroid 1, Metroid 2, and Metroid Fusion are going to be Let's Talks. And then Super Metroid, we have already one of the Let's Play videos up. And then, let's see, Metroid Other M and the Prime Trilogy will also be Let's Plays. So we'll actually have some footage there, you know. But let's go ahead and get down to it. So we're going to talk about Metroid 1, which, like all NES-style games, does not really have much of a plot to it. You're sort of just dropped on this place, which is Planet Zebus is the name of it. And your whole entire point is to pretty much destroy Mother Brain, who seems to be this very antagonistically evil leader of these space pirates. Now, one thing I really love about Metroid, after playing it, is that it feels a lot like Mario with guns and upgrades. That's a good way to put it. Just because the controls are tight, the jumping's perfect, everything about it is pretty perfect except for the level design. I'm not a huge fan of when you get into Norfair, I believe is the name of it. The tunnels start looking identical, so you think you're in the same tunnel when you're in a different tunnel, and then you're in, and there's a few other problems, like there's a infinite spawning enemy that sort of like a bug fly thing that flies up out of a pit and then goes flying towards you, and if one of those flies up and is following after you and you go through a door, let's say you've got like 10 energy left or something like that, he'll actually clip through the door and hit you in the process and kill you while you're well, not really invulnerable, but you're vulnerable because you cannot do anything when it's doing that loading animation in the next area while you're walking through the door, and yet it can hit you and kill you. So that's not fun. Had that happen a couple times. And there's a few things I really, really love as well, aside from the whole Mario, it being like a Mario with guns type thing. I really like the fact that the upgrades, you can actually find some of them earlier than you're supposed to, at least that's the way it feels. And then one other thing I really, really love is when I fought the first boss, Kraid, who I do remember that boss from Super Metroid. In Super Metroid, he's this enormous thing. Like, he takes up, you can barely even see his head and part of his chest and the screen in Super Metroid. And this one, he is literally the same size as Samus. They're like that size, the exact same size as far as their pixels and everything go. And he loves to shoot spikes out, and he has 4 spikes, if I remember correctly, that he shoots out, and they're all boomerang type things, so they come back to him. I first tried fighting him by freezing all of his spikes in midair and then shooting missiles at him, and that was an atrocious idea, especially considering the fact that there's lava on either side and you get bounced around a lot, and if you fall into the lava, it's really hard to get out, and you just sit there and essentially burn to death. So after trying the whole freezing and shooting missiles at him thing, sadly they don't stay frozen permanently, I've sort of figured out that if I turn into a ball, the morph ball form, when I get hit, I don't bounce as much, and I have quite a bit more control over where I bounce, whereas when you're standing, you're bounced, and you're bounced, and you're bounced, and you're getting hit all over the place. So I turned the morph ball form, and the bombs did damage to him. So I just started dropping bombs all over the place, and eventually, Kraid went down. So Kraid was actually a pretty simple boss, but to my sort of disappointment, after leaving Brinstar, which is where Kraid is, I went into Norfair, which, like I mentioned earlier, has the atrocious tunnels. Eventually found Ridley. Ridley, I definitely remember from Super Metroid. A lot of people who don't know anything about Metroid know Ridley. He's he is like the shining example of antagonist in this series. So I was expecting this epic, awesome fight, and instead I walked up to him, sat and unloaded my missiles, and he died without him ever once hitting me. It was really, really, really depressing. Easy, and thankfully easy, made it easier for me to beat the game, but I wanted an actual fight. So after I'd beaten them two, I really didn't know what to do. I was just running around pretty much trying to figure out what to do. And then I consulted a guide and found out that there's some statues that lead into Torian, I believe is the name of the area. And I was faced with the Metroid for the first time. Now, Metroids are really, really, really creepy in Metroid 1. And the only reason why is because of how huge they are. Like, they're enormous, and the sprite, I don't know, it's like the resolution, or maybe it's just the detail, how many pixels they put into them. They look like they're out of a Super Nintendo game, because their detail, where Samus is obviously in an NES game, and it's a little disconcerting when you watch it. Like when they first show up, just because, like, I know these things are supposed to be here, but these things are crazy scary because they do not fit in. They just don't. So you go through hallways infested with Metroids, eventually kill them off wonderfully, and you get to, I'm just going to call it the Death Hallway. I don't know what exactly to call it. It's actually the room that Mother Brain's in, and what I mentioned earlier with Kraid, where you're getting bounced around all over the place, you've got rings that home in on you. You've got laser turrets all over the place, and you have to precisely shoot your missiles in order to break these little like glass tube things. And the worst thing about them is they start out like normal size, and then as you shoot them, they sort of start to shrink until they eventually just disappear. But as you're shooting them, if they shrink down, and let's say you're getting knocked around and you can't get shots in, they start to go back to being big again. So you're getting knocked around all over the place. Eventually you get to the very last area, the very last section of the hallway, which has Mother Brain on the left, and then you've got, once again, the laser turrets and the homing rings, and you've got a pool of lava down here. The pool of lava, just like Kraid's, if you fall into it, you are very much annoyingly stuck in that pool of lava. You can get out, but you have to mash the jump button to eventually be able to get flung out. So you're trying to shoot and bust the glass and then get through to Mother Brain and shoot her with missiles. Eventually, of course, you do defeat her. I did defeat her. And then you're tasked with getting out of there, because Torian is set to explode, I guess. So you're rushing out, and you eventually get out and get into your ship, and boom, flying off the planet, and you're good to go. And that's pretty much Metroid 1. I got the, I don't know if there's 3 different endings in Metroid 1. I got the ending where she just takes off her helmet. I know there's another one where she actually takes off her whole suit. But yeah, I got the ending. And Metroid 1 is stupidly, fantastically awesome, and I cannot explain enough how much I am disappointed that I did not play it sooner. I can see why it's a classic, and the next game we're going to be talking about here in our next video is Metroid 2, The Return of Samus for the Game Boy. So join us for that one, and we will see you on our next Let's Talk.